Hi, you guys. This is Irene, and I wanted to do a commentary on a video that a fellow YouTuber made by the name of Cindy Black. Cindy is a gorgeous Black woman who does makeup here on YouTube. She's known probably best for her stunning blue eyes. Now, she is stunning herself, but she does have bright, bright blue eyes, and they're very striking because she is a dark skinned, very Afro relatable featured Black woman. And by Afro relatable featured, I know that's like a mouthful. I just mean that she's got full lips, large nose, nice chocolate skin. And so she did this video called Colorism is an Illusion, and she got a lot of pushback for it. So much so that the video is now down. She tried changing the name, the pushback didn't stop. She finally took the video down. I feel she was lightweight bullied into taking the video down because people didn't agree with her. I think sometimes the intolerance of other views in our community is pretty crazy. And that's something that I try really, really hard to overcome in my interactions with other Black YouTubers and with our people just in general in the greater society, because we all have different sorts of places that we're coming from. Everybody's life experience isn't the same, even though we are all Black. So with that said, I didn't agree with everything in her video, but I did get the vibe where she was coming from, especially growing up in the hate, growing up in San Francisco. I totally understand the idea that color doesn't matter and race doesn't matter and we're all people. That's literally what I grew up around. That's literally what was rooted in me. I always recognized that there were unique um, issues that we had within the Black community, but I thought that that was a result of overall ignorance of all people. And it wasn't until I started talking to Black people outside of like my bubble in San Francisco and outside of California that I was really, really able to understand that the Black experience is very different, very, very different for other Black people. In addition to that, when I traveled outside of California, I had some really crazy experiences myself where I was kind of taken aback, like in my 20s, like, oh my gosh, nothing like this has ever happened to me before. And it was hard for me even to recognize it for what it was because that wasn't a part of my life experience. So it took me a while to just sort of assimilate that. So, with that said, I've been looking at the reactions to her video. A lot of things I think were warranted. She did engage in like a lot of historical fact finding. Normally, the lead ons, like when you're kind of new agey in your thought process, there's a lot of like lead ups to justifying ignoring reality that you start with. So you start with how many people have been enslaved, for example, which she did. She talked about slavery of whites against whites, blacks enslaving blacks, so on and so forth. Just that normal rhetoric that's kind of like the build up to a bunch of new aginess. Let me call it that. Um, but she did have some valid points there about colorism being an illusion. I think in a perfect world, her methodology would work. In a perfect world, we really could eliminate the problem of race and colorism even within the Black community. And I do want to just say this with a caveat that it was interesting. A lot of people were focused on um, white versus Black colorism, and that to me is just racism versus colorism. When I think colorism, I think isolated within the Black community, how we descript ourselves and cast ourselves. When I think of colorism outside of the Black community, to me, that's racism. Do you know what I mean? That's westernization, racism, a result of colonialism. I So they're two separate issues to me, but I see that in this conversation, and as I was watching mostly other Black female YouTubers comment on this, that this became more of like a black and white issue. And so she was saying essentially that you have a lot of control over your environment and that your universe is what you make it. Like I said, she's new agey.
If you're not actively creating it, then you're letting other people create it for you. So while I'm not discrediting anyone's experience or saying that you don't experience colorism, you don't experience racism or sexism, you definitely do, and I have experienced those as well. But I think in this day and age, it's important to ask ourselves, how are we contributing to this illusion? How are we allowing ourselves to be made victim of these illusions?
Your universe is what you make it, and blah, 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 blah. And I totally get that. Y'all, nobody gets it more than me. Okay. So I grew up around hippies. But I also recognize that we have to deal in factual reality. So in a perfect world, we could squash all of this division between human beings and between the races, and we could fix all of the damage that colonialism has done and westernization, which is a result of Europeans dominating and raping and pillaging basically everybody else on the planet. We could eliminate all of that by us all collectively, and that would take all or most of us agreeing to dispense with the words, the verbiage, the color verbiage, the anything, just dispense with all of these learned habits. And if we all did that, I guarantee you in 2 generations, this wouldn't even be a problem anymore. The thing is that that's not real life. So we are not going to overthrow the status quo and deep seated systems, especially here on my channel where I go into, you know, government documents and medical documents and um, conversations among the elite, and we look at in depth at these things and analyze them. We recognize how deep seated this problem is. And so while you can have a very isolated bubble like I grew up in San Francisco, you can have a very isolated bubble of people who move a certain way. And let me tell you, San Francisco is being polluted now because so many outsiders have moved in. It's not the way it was when I grew up. But you can have an isolated bubble like that. But then you have to deal with the greater world, right? So when we say color is an illusion, but I know in like the past 5 years, there have been 6 tribes of people who were completely killed and annihilated by whites. When I say colorism is an illusion, but I know that right now there are human safaris where I can go view Black people the way you would animals in a zoo, like today. If I say colorism is an illusion, but I know that if Meghan Markle looked like me, or even like Cindy Black, who made the video, she would not be marrying that prince. Um, I think that it does an injustice to reality. So in theory, I understand where she's going with it. And honestly, I had to cross this bridge too. Like there's nothing like growing up in a neighborhood full of hippies and then going out into the world where nobody's met a hippie to really teach you that there's a bridge that you need to cross. But the response that she got, I really disliked the response that she got. Like we're so quick. First of all, let's be clear. We didn't create the issue of colorism or race or color caste systems. That's not a creation of the Black community. So I really dislike when we start attacking each other on these issues. But, you know, the attacks then became discussions about her eye color, that she has a level of privilege because, mind you, she couldn't be attacked because of her skin color because she's dark. She couldn't be attacked because of her features because she's got full lips, a large nose. Like she is Black, undeniably Black. So then it was like, oh, but she has blue eyes. So her moving about in the world was different. It wasn't Black enough. And because of that inkling of privilege that she had, that changes everything about her viewpoint. Then it turned into where her husband or her partner is Asian, a white Asian at that. Um, and so that just says everything right there. And I think, you know, not to say there's not truth to those arguments. Definitely there is a bit of privilege. But I feel like we're always measuring ourselves as Black people against the other. And everybody knows that I feel the standard for Blackness has to be the darkest person in the room with the most woolly hair and the most Afro relatable features. I think that is essential to combat the vitriol and conditioning and in pulling down of our people that has gone on a global level. I think it's essential. So let's just get that out the way. But I also recognize that every time a Black person tries to speak who doesn't fit that mold, it is immediate, their voice is immediately discarded because, well, there's a level of privilege to your appearance. So you really cannot talk on that issue, right? And I've had this come to me. Now I'm fairly dark, but my nose isn't large enough, or my hair is not curly enough, or, you know, whatever the case is, isn't good enough. So then there's like this whole thing I'm not allowed to speak on, right? And I feel like that happened to her, even though she's literally the ideal Black woman, save the fact that she has a genetic condition that causes her eyes to be blue. And I think her mother even has like one blue eye. And I personally know a little Black girl who looks exactly like her. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little dark chocolate Black girl with bright blue eyes. So, it does happen. And I feel like she was dismissed because of that. I think that there's room in this conversation for both sides of the argument to be true. I think that there is room for the argument that you have a lot of control over your own universe, and that's something that you can control. And I think we control that by schooling our own children. You guys know I homeschool. I think we control that by teaching things from an Afro-centered perspective. I think that we control that by controlling our own narrative. And I think that's what she was saying, is that you write the narrative of your life. And that is a very true thing. And I think that has to meet, and that's something I had to learn. And I would encourage other Black people that feel that they're just being progressive and everybody else is being remedial in their thought process, that progressive thought process has to meet reality. And so when we have global systems set in place, where, as I said before, there are literally Black people, beautiful, gorgeous, deep, deep chocolate Black people that are being viewed in a human safari the way you would a lion or a tiger or a bear, then our new age thinking has to meet the reality of how Western society moves. And so we can embrace those thoughts, because I feel that there needs to be a change in power. I do feel that the time of colonialism by Europeans needs to come to an end. They've already proven how they move in the world. And so we need to see this empire fall. But I do think that we need to retain these ideologies because we don't want to become like them, right? We don't want to go forth and just start annihilating everybody who doesn't meet our standard. Um, we want to have a more humane approach to our treatment of other people as we displace them. So, with that said, I think that there's room for that conversation that she's having, but I think that that needs to meet pragmatism and overall reality of our people. And so we have to understand that in a culture, like recently I read a paper that was published by the US Census Bureau, in a culture that, according to that paper, in adoption settings, a transracial adoption is only called so when a Black child is involved. So if it's any other race of child, that's not transracial. It's only when a Black child is involved that it's transracial, and that there's a whole different language that's used when a Black child is involved. In a culture that operates like that at its core, there's only so much authoring of your own universe that you can do, right? And I think that's some of the points that some of the other ladies are trying to point out. But I really want us just to think about having these conversations without attacking each other. There's always room to glean something from what someone else has said, even if you're not in 100% agreement with them. And I think a true fall, a true fallacy that we run into, I guess that is a fall, right? That we run into is the attacking of each other. And in a system that was designed to divide us, right? Especially in the Black community, a system that was designed to divide us, we have to be careful. We need to tread lightly as we have these discussions, and not start attacking people because we feel that their physical appearance or their privilege has aided them in a system that was designed to cater and pander to the Euro physiology and phenotype. And so I think we need to keep our focus on what matters. And what matters is overcoming a system that was designed to divide us and to hold us down collectively. And so, the energy that went toward her physical appearance and just trying to find anything about her that would discredit her stance. I didn't really love that. I think on both sides of the argument, there were things that we could take from. I think I've expressed that in this video, and I think we have to remember that we do author our own universes. Colorism literally is an illusion. Like in real life, it is an illusion. This is, we are literally just on a spectrum of color on this earth. And so, in that sense, it's an illusion. It's very, very stupid. Like it all starts to blur together when you put the colors side by side. But unfortunately, we can't will our way out of a system that has been carefully crafted. We go into schools and learn about evolution, which was founded by actual racists. We praise Darwin, whose book was about the evolutionary fight between the preferred and the de-evolved races, the de-evolved being me and the Black people watching this. So we have to consider that as well. And pragmatism has to meet that new age thinking. And we need to unify as a people and not do things that step on the toes of each other. And with that said, I'll talk to you guys later.